And we were all in the conference room together going over the latest draft. And the senior partner got to a certain section and he said, "Who made this change?" And I was scared. I had made the change.
This is Unlawful. Welcome to Unlawful. I'm Brandon Renken, as always, and with me today is Tara Rhoades. Welcome to the show, Tara.
Thanks for having me, Brandon.
No problem. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Tara. What are you up to?
Sure. So I started out in New York City and I started at Cravath, Moore in tax practice. And I spent about 4 years there, ended up moving over to Kirkland & Ellis, also in New York, and wanted to focus more on private equity work, which I definitely got to do there and had wonderful experiences at both. But to be honest, from early in my legal practice, I knew I wanted to probably move into something completely different at some point in my career. I did know I wanted to invest in being the best lawyer I could. And I took so much from my big law practice. And sometimes people may look at me now. I've started my own business as a coach and speaker and educator in the legal space. And sometimes people look at that and think, what a huge jump. But I feel like there's so many lessons I've taken from my legal practice that I still bring into my work every day. And in addition to just my network. And so don't regret any second of my big law career.
Tell me a little bit about what that is. What do you mean when you say you're a coach or leader, a legal coach or leader or educator?
Sure. So one of the primary things I do is I work individually with clients. A lot of my clients are attorneys of some sort. Some of them aren't. But I brand myself primarily as a career coach. But as we know, our careers touch all aspects of our lives, right?
Sure.
So sometimes I frame myself as more of a career and wellness coach, and I have coach-specific training in different areas, including health and wellness and ADHD coaching. And so I bring all of my legal experience and that training to best support my clients.
Did you do that training before you became a lawyer, before you went to law school, or was it something you expanded into to start this new line of your career?
Yeah, great question. It's something I expanded into once I decided that I wanted to pursue coaching.
I got you. And what even made you aware that coaching was a career?
I really enjoyed mentorship when I was working as an attorney. I worked a lot training and mentoring junior associates. And as I became partner and became more senior, working with junior partners, senior associates, and all of that, I knew I wanted something that I could pursue with my own vision. And in addition to that, I knew I wanted to bring something related to mentorship to my services. And so that's really how I kind of discovered coaching. I started to learn about coaching in part through LinkedIn and seeing how other people were employing that in their businesses, and like law firms now and more have their internal coaching departments. So it's becoming more integrated also into the legal profession in that way as well.
It seems like it takes a lot of internal fortitude and confidence, not only in your experience, but in your ability to apply that to other people's lives and situations. What was it that gave you the ability to do that?
That's a really great question. On the point about confidence, that's one of the skills that I've really brought from my big law practice. Something I've talked about a lot is when I started my big law career, and even when I was in college and started law school, like it went way further back really than legal practice, but I had a lot of fear, which I think a lot of students and new attorneys have. And I worked through that fear to try to get to a place where I could see the value I could bring and tried to leverage like some bravery to be able to ask the questions, right?
Yeah.
To seek out the mentorship. And so it was really a lot of my experiences overcoming that fear in law school and then in my big law practice that gave me the confidence to think there are lots of people that do start their own businesses. There are lots of people who become coaches and do all kinds of things that feel scary and unknown. And I thought, if other people can do it, I think I've proven to myself at this point that's a risk I'm willing to take. And I think could lead me to a place where I feel even more fulfilled and satisfied in my career.
What's interesting to me about what you just said, I was talking about the fear of being the mentor, and you were talking a little bit about the fear of being the mentee. And it's interesting that it happened on both sides, right? The teacher feels like the imposter and the student feels unworthy. And it's curious because I've never thought about it in that exact dichotomy. I've worked in big law firms my whole life and have seen people suffer that fear, the fear of seeking a mentor. But I've never seen the true mentors act in a way that foments it. So you've been in the space, you've talked to people on both sides, you've been a teacher, you've been a student. What do you think creates that fear? Specifically, what I'm talking about is the fear as the learner, the person who's supposed to be asking for the help, to even ask for that help. Where does that come from?
That's a great question. I think it's really complex, and there are probably many answers to it. But I think one of them, going to this idea of imposter syndrome, which is talked about a lot, is very common. A lot of my clients self-identify as having imposter syndrome, certainly not all. But I think there's this sense that even with our peers, for example, when we're in law school, when we're starting our careers early on, a lot of people don't want to show the vulnerability to admit that they're scared, that they're not sure what to do, that they don't understand something, or they don't know something. And so I think you look around and you see your peers projecting confidence when maybe some of them feel it, maybe some of them don't, though. Maybe some of them are feeling the same fear you do, but you start to feel like you're the only one, because a lot of people are not willing to admit that and make themselves vulnerable in that way. And so that's something I've really focused on as a mentor in Big Law, as a coach, to be willing to let clients know it's okay to show vulnerability, that it's normal. And as a leader, I think it's important to show vulnerability, because those are some of the moments that I've learned and bonded with my mentors the most when I was in my Big Law career, is being able to see that they have the same frustrations or fears or uncertainty sometimes. They don't know everything. And getting a little glimpse into that can make a huge difference.
What is your unlawful moment?
You know, I've been thinking about this, and we've been kind of hinting at these things about teamwork.
Sure.
And it's one of the things that I really took away from my Big Law experience that made it as fulfilling and as good of an experience as it was. And I didn't feel like I had that sort of experience before I was in Big Law, of working with this big team, of working on something that no one person could possibly do on their own. And so I think my unlawful moment was getting to see the picture of how I could contribute to that team early in my career. So I was near the end of my first year as an associate, and I was working on this really complex tax memo, and it was kind of all hands on deck. It was the senior partner, another partner, a senior associate, and I was getting tons of rounds of comments. I was consolidating everyone's comments, organizing everything, making sure it's site checked, it's formatted, all these things. And we were all in the conference room together going over the latest draft. And the senior partner got to a certain section and he said, "Who made this change?" And I was scared. I had made the change. I felt confident the change was correct, but I still was a deer in the headlights at that point. I hadn't developed the confidence yet. And so the other partner and the senior associate both said, "I didn't make the change." And he just looked at me and smiled and nodded, and that was it. But that moment gave me the confidence to know that I do have something to contribute. I have a better sense of what my role is on this team and how that role can evolve. And I felt like that was a moment that really distinguished me as a young associate, being able to contribute something in this great, massive undertaking.
What I love about it is that it both distinguished you and it didn't. And what I mean by that is, for sure, in that scenario, you were the young associate that absolutely did the right thing that needed to be done and had the wherewithal to do it, both knowledge-wise and confidence-wise. But the other thing that I think is really important about it is not how common you are, but how common that experience is, and how it's almost completely ignored by the commentary about big law firms.
But definitely the goal is that you have a team where there's not that sense of feeling threatened, right, by ideas being thrown out there or questions being asked. And that's what I loved about the practice, when I could work with people that had that same attitude. And I wanted to bring that attitude into my own leadership as well.
Helping lawyers understand what it is to be lawyers and humans at the same time. I think it's really fruitful and really beneficial. And I thank you for doing it. And I thank you for spending a little bit of your time with me.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for what you're doing. I think it's important to have people on both sides of the conversation, people who are still on the inside, so to speak, and people from the outside. And I think both perspectives are really important. So thank you for what you're doing.
And maybe some of them will be telling their clients to watch Unlawful, but that's Unlawful. Thank you so much, Tara.
Thank you so much, Brandon.